7. SS President Coolidge. The SS President Coolidge was constructed in 1931 and was designed as a luxury passenger liner. A decade into her service, she was relinquished to be part of the US war effort, helping to transport soldiers and goods to key military locations. For the first year of her service, SS President Coolidge operated under her civilian guise. However, after being dispatched to Australia in January 1942 in a large supply convoy transporting troops, guns, ammunition, and supplies, she was fully refitted for military use as a troop ship. She was painted in the US Navy's traditional haze gray color, and she had her interior reconfigured, leaving all the luxury fixtures and fittings for civilian guests boarded over to make more space to hold troops and supplies. To defend herself in hostile waters, she also had guns mounted on her deck. With her refit completed, SS President Coolidge continued to serve as a cargo vessel in the Southwest Pacific Theater, visiting places like Bora Bora, Auckland, Suva, and Wellington. She even had the honor of transporting the then president of the Philippines, Manuel Quezon, from Melbourne, Australia to San Francisco. Then, on October 6, 1942, she began her final journey from San Francisco to New Caledonia and the New Hebrides. Her passengers included the 172nd Infantry Combat Unit, the 43rd Division, and the Harbor Defense Unit. The latter was headed to safeguard the new bomber base on the island of Santo in the Pacific that was supporting the Allied forces in Guadalcanal. Santo posed a danger to SS President Coolidge. Not only did she and her crew have to be wary of Japanese ships and submarines that could be prowling the waters, but there was another threat as well. In order to keep Japanese and other enemy vessels out of Santo, a network of mines had been set up around the harbor. However, the location of these underwater mines was kept a secret by the US Navy, so SS President Coolidge had no idea where any of the mines were. During her approach to Santo on October 26th, the ship hit one of the mines, which subsequently detonated near her engine room. Moments later, she struck another one, this time blasting through her stern. The ship's captain, Henry Nelson, knew that the ship was doomed. And in an effort to save as many lives as possible, he made a beeline for shallow water in order to ground the vessel before it could sink. Amazingly, out of the 5,340 men on board, there were only 2 casualties. Thanks to where the ship was run aground by her captain, many of those on board were able to simply walk to shore. However, some men were trapped below deck, and Captain Ewart of the 103rd Field Artillery Regiment went back to save them. He was able to pull them out one by one with a rope, but the effort left him too tired to evacuate the ship himself. This, unfortunately, caused him to be one of the men that perished, alongside fireman Robert Reed, who lost his life in the explosion that hit the engine room. Although most of her crew and passengers made it out safely, the same fate wasn't shared by SS President Coolidge. The ship was stuck on a coral reef and slowly began to lean to one side before slipping into the deeper water of the Santo shipping canal. Despite the ill-fated destiny of SS President Coolidge, today she's one of the most incredible wrecks divers can experience anywhere in the world. Due to the wreck's accessibility, great visibility, and location, the ship ranks as one of the globe's top 10 dive sites. 6. The finds of Europe's droughts. Things often remain hidden underwater, and we typically only find out about them when the water recedes. That was the case for many historic artifacts around Europe in the summer of 2022, when widespread heat waves and droughts led to many fascinating discoveries across the continent. Some of the relics that were uncovered from their watery resting places were amazing pieces of history. For example, in Rome, the river Tiber's water level dropped to the point where under the modern bridge called the Vittorio Emanuele II, another bridge's remains could be seen underneath it. This bridge is thought to date back to 50 AD, which means it was likely commissioned by Emperor Nero during the Roman Empire. In 1926, researchers and archaeologists in Spain were given a rare chance to study the dolmen of Guadalcanal. The site is sometimes referred to as the Spanish Stonehenge. However, it was intentionally flooded in 1963 in order to make room for a new residential project. Since the circle of stones was submerged, it's only been visible on 4 occasions, so scientists need to make the most of it when it's accessible. Some things that were hidden underwater were a bit more sinister, though. At another river in Italy, the River Po, citizens were evacuated from a village near the city of Mantua after the receding river uncovered an unexploded bomb from World War II. More dangerous war-era leftovers were uncovered in the Serbian stretch of the River Danube, where part of a Nazi fleet emerged from the water, still loaded with explosives. Across the River Elm's banks, which runs from Germany all the way to the Czech Republic, many stones with carvings etched into them began to appear. These hunger stones were left as a warning from previous generations to let others know that if the stones became visible again, there would likely be a famine. 5. The ancient city of Pavlo, Pantry. In 1904, the Greek geologist Fokion Negri reported that there was an ancient city submerged beneath the waves between the coast of southern Laconia and the Greek island of Elefonisos. However, his claims would go ignored for over 60 years, until oceanographer Dr. Nicholas Fleming decided to study the area in 1967. He would find out that what Negri had said was true, and there truly was a sunken ancient city at that location. Fleming went back to the site a year later to do a full investigation. Working with a team of scientists, they were able to map out the scale of the city, which was named Pavlo Pantry, and even determine just how old the site actually was. What they found was astonishing. There were remnants of buildings, organized streets, and even squares. What's even more fascinating is that most of these structures were built between 1680 and 1180 BC in the Mycenaean period, making them over 2,000 years old. And although most of the construction dates to this period, Pavlo Pantry itself was apparently much older. The experts on the dive from the University of Cambridge estimated that the city was first inhabited in 2800 BC. In 2009, a full 40 years later, another study was carried out at the site by Dr. Chrysanthi Frenchman and Dr. John Henderson from the University of Nottingham. This time, they used advanced scanning techniques that allowed researchers to identify 15 buildings that each had over 12 individual rooms. And despite the fact that Pavlo Pantry was a prehistoric settlement, they uncovered water pipes, canals, and even a water management system. So why did this city end up underwater? Although scientists can't narrow down an exact date, they all seem to be in agreement that it was likely a massive earthquake that forced Pavlo Pantry beneath the waves. 4. The sunken city of XI Jiang. XI Jiang was once a walled Chinese city with architecture dating back to the Ming and Qing dynasties, which ruled from 1368 to 1912. With the name meaning Lion City in Mandarin, you'd expect it to be a fiercely protected heritage site. However, this isn't exactly the case. In 1959, the city of XI Jiang was intentionally flooded to create the Zinan Dam as well as a hydroelectric power station. It wasn't as though XI Jiang was abandoned either. Over 300,000 people were forced to leave their homes, many of whom could trace their family tree back for centuries in the city. XI Jiang remained submerged and forgotten for 42 years, until the Chinese government decided to survey the site in 2001 in order to see how the flooded city was faring under the water. A further expedition by the Chinese National Geography that took place 10 years later gave those on the surface access to never-before-seen pictures of the sunken city. They also released some illustrations based on those images, showing what the city would have looked like at the peak of its occupation. The city's walls were likely built in the 1500s, and unlike other walled cities in China, XI Jiang had 5 entrance gates, rather than the usual 4 seen at other settlements. The city was rather small and only spanned across half a square kilometer, but what it lacked in size, it made up for with its elaborate 256 stone arches, which depicted dragons, lions, and phoenixes. Amazingly, the water seems to have been a saving grace for preserving XI Jiang. The calm waters of Qingdao Lake provide it with protection from the sun, wind, and rain. Today, divers can book a trip down to see the sunken city and experience the wonder of what some people call China's Atlantis for themselves. 3. Cenote Angelitas Underwater River. In the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico is the Cenote Angelita Cave. Cenotes are natural sinkholes caused by the erosion of limestone rock, which reveal underground pools of water. They're enjoyed by locals and tourists alike for their relaxing and unique atmosphere. However, Cenote Angelita is different than most. Underneath the waters of the cave is a flowing underwater river. The presence of hydrogen sulfide causes this breathtaking natural phenomenon to occur. The substance is heavier than salt water, allowing it to sink and settle to the bottom of the riverbed, creating a layer of the underwater river. This process is similar to how a layered cocktail relies upon the density of each ingredient to keep them separate. The cave can reach a depth of almost 330 feet in certain places. Divers that visit the cenote will want to follow this underwater river from above rather than swimming through it. It does, however, make for quite a beautiful journey, with trees and other foliage lining the underwater riverbanks. Would you want to swim in an underwater river? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. 2. Zemchon Canyon. Despite being one of the globe's most popular tourist attractions, the Grand Canyon in Arizona isn't actually the largest canyon in the world. If you want to find the biggest one, you'll need to look underwater. Zemchon Canyon is located in the Bering Sea just off the coast of Alaska. The canyon was named after the Soviet research ship that discovered it, but the word Zemchon also means pearl in Russian. It forms a T-shape on the ocean floor and is over 20% wider and deeper than the Grand Canyon. Although it's hard to measure the full scope of the underwater gorge, it plunges over 8,500 feet into the Aleutian Basin. Due to the sheer scope and depth of the Zemchon Canyon, it's impossible for us to explore most of it, especially the deeper levels. However, in 2007, deep-sea diver Michelle Ridgway embarked on a solo mission in a tiny 8-foot-long submarine to see what was down there. She wasn't able to go right to the bottom of the canyon, where it reaches the Aleutian Basin, but Ridgway was able to descend to 1,757 feet to a small shelf. Even then, the marine life she saw was fascinating. Curiously, though, they all seem to have something in common with each other. Despite being diverse species, all the creatures at that depth were various colors of yellow and orange. Ridgway noted that they ranged in hue from pale gold to brick red. It's unknown why the creatures share this color, but it's a mystery that Ridgway and other marine scientists are hoping to solve. In the future, they also plan to learn more in general about the vast and enigmatic Zemchon Canyon. 1. A 900-year-old Crusaders Sword. In October 2021, Shlomi Katzin was diving off the Carmel coast in Israel when he made a remarkable discovery just 15 feet below the surface. The area is known to have a lot of history, but Katzin was stunned when he pulled a sword from the bottom of the water. Although it might sound like a legend, it wasn't exactly a shining blade, but instead a rusting piece of metal encrusted in barnacles and coral in the shape of a sword. However, underneath all of its biological crust, it was almost perfectly preserved. This discovery was made all the more significant when it was determined that the sword dates back over 900 years, during the times of the Holy Crusades. This wasn't the only thing that Katzin was able to find on his dive either. He also uncovered anchors made out of stone and metal, as well as pottery. All of the items that he found dated back between the 11th and 13th centuries. Katzin was able to make these finds, which had been hidden for centuries thanks to a shift in the sands. However, the sand can move again just as quickly, so the diver tried to recover all that he could so he could bring them to the IAA, Israel's Antiquities Authority, to be recorded and analyzed. After examining the weapon, the IAA didn't have any clues as to who exactly would have wielded the sword. They did, however, determine that the owner of the weapon had to have been fairly strong and capable. The blade, made of solid iron, needs to be held with 2 hands, and if you were also wearing heavy armor at the same time, holding the sword would have been a feat that many people would struggle to accomplish. The Carmel Coast has long been an area of archaeological significance due to the fact that it's been used as a port for thousands of years. This is partly because of natural coves formed in the coastline, which provide protection for boats and other vessels in harsh weather conditions. As a result, many settlements sprung up around these coves, and merchants from all over the world and across the Mediterranean would frequently stop there, creating a wealth of treasures on the seafloor. Which one of these underwater finds captivated you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.